Hello and welcome again to another episode of Cooking Unlocked. I'm Elizabeth Locke and today we are making a vegan French onion soup. What will you need to make this delicious item? An entire bottle of Chardonnay. Doesn't have to be an expensive one, but make sure it is one that is tasty, because if you're not willing to drink it, don't cook with it. A half a cup of brandy, same rule applies. 3 pounds of onions, white, brown, yellow, they all work just the same. My preferred onion would be a Vidalia, but this is not the season for that, so we're going to use white onions. We need 2 cups of vegetable stock, a half a cup of margarine, 2 tablespoons of Pink Himalayan Salt, a half a cup of green chopped chives, an entire clove of smashed garlic, 2 tablespoons of crushed garlic, and 4 bay leaves. Then after you've done all your cooking, you need to also have some really great crispy bread. We've got vegan cheese, and then we also have some vegetarians in the house that do enjoy real cheese. We've got some Swiss cheese, and you can certainly use Gruyere for that as well. So again, good crusty cheese, a vegan cheese or traditional cheese, a veggie stock, your onions, Chardonnay, brandy, salt, margarine, green onions, whole crushed cloves of garlic, chopped cloves of garlic, and some bay leaves. Super simple recipe. Now I know, generally this is a beef stock recipe, but I'm not a fan of that. Even if I could eat that, I don't like the flavor of that. So I have always made this a vegan item and then making it a vegetarian item by using a true cheese. But I can tell you my friends and family who love French onion actually prefer mine to the traditional one that they would find with that beef stock. So let's get going on this recipe. All right, the first thing we're going to need to do is actually cut up all of our onions. So directly in half, cut off your ends. Pull off your peels. And we're just going to do some nice half slices. Really, so they just look like this. I like mine to fall apart so that I have all these beautiful half rings in the soup. I know many people like to do a rougher chop on their French onion soup, or to use an entire ring instead of cutting it in half. But if you've ever eaten French onion soup out in public with friends and family, and you get that giant stringy onion in your mouth, there's no dainty way to break an onion in half and still look like you have any manners at all. Well, the same thing is true when you're eating with your friends and your family at home. A half piece of onion like this easily fits on the spoon and directly into your mouth, and you don't have to be embarrassed by some long stringy piece. Also, I'm not a fan of getting any kind of hard piece of onion in my soup. I really like them to melt in my mouth. This is a more consistent cut, which allows for a more consistent cook, so that when you're eating that soup, every piece is just tender and light. So if you are a crier when cutting onions like I am, and I get the sniffles, I've actually put some doTERRA Breathe under my nose, but you can certainly use Vicks. It isn't time where I need to know or smell what I'm cooking yet. Rather, I'm doing all my prep work with my onions. I can tell you I can't smell the onions right now. I'm not being affected by them, which is lovely, because it's difficult to cook when your eyes are burning, and really what makes you cry from the onions, it's the fumes that come up off the onion. Well, it's not getting through my Breathe. It's really nice. So, little tip for you if you're a crier like I am with the onions. onions. All right, it's time to start the sauteing process. Wait before you ever add any actual liquid. We're gonna start with our entire, we're gonna start with our entire half a cup of the vegetarian Nucoa or margarine. I like the Nucoa because it really melts beautifully. And it gives that feeling of the butter, that richness. So as that is melting down, then we're going to add our garlic. I use both kinds of garlic. So we've got, just the smashed clove where we've just opened up that clove, smashed it with a knife. I like those bigger chunks because you find those still within your soup later, whereas the very fine cut garlic is going to really disappear into your broth. So I like to have both of those. I like to have some textural elements when I'm cooking. Soup should be pleasing both to the tongue for texture as well as for flavor. So how many people will this recipe feed? Well, I'm using a smaller bowl to serve with. This is something I can put into the oven. So I can make 8 bowls of this size, which is really a half a cup of soup. This is really a rich soup, so if you're going to serve this with an entree, a half a cup serving of this is perfect. But if you are using this as a meal and you're going to use a nice big crock bowl, then you would get 4 good servings out of it. So 8 small beginning, if it will, you're going to do several rounds of food, that's a nice size. Or if you're doing it as a meal, this would serve 4 people, and it would be a nice hearty meal. And we're gonna wait till that margarine is completely melted before we add those onions. And we're looking like we're just about there. So it's time to put our onions in, all of them. And we are going to saute these until they become translucent. That's when you know that the onions are beginning to cook, but they're not completely cooked. But that rest of that cooking process is gonna happen with the Chardonnay, the Brandy, the veggie stock. So we wanna saute them just until they become translucent, and then we're going to simmer it. First we're gonna bring it up to a boil, then we're gonna turn it down to a nice simmer so it's kind of just a rolling boil, and that will take 2 hours. So this is something you get started earlier in the day. This is not a 30-minute meal, if you will. This is something that you need to cook earlier. I love it the next day. I actually think it's better. So I would do this part of my meal prep on Sunday, which is when I like to do that. And then this is something that I would serve maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday, but it's already done. It will stay in your refrigerator easily for 5 days, or it freezes beautifully. What you wouldn't want to put in the freezer is that beautiful, the crostini, the crusted bread with the cheese. That you would leave on the side. You could put this in portion control pieces in your freezer, take it out. It's a wonderful thing to have also at work or at school. Stick that in the microwave, and then on the side where you've got your toasted crusty bread, piece of cheese, 30 seconds at that finish in the microwave. So a great thing to have already prepped to take out with you or to serve later in the week with your family. We're gonna eat this one tonight. So I'm just making it earlier in the day, and then I'll let that simmer all day on the stove while I'm doing other things around the house. It's a good thing to get started early in the morning, and then all day long you have that wonderful smell of soup cooking. Soup is a fabulous thing to serve your family most of the time. It actually helps spread that budget for you because soup does fill them up. And by them, I mean the children. They, especially for me, I have teenage boys and they can eat me out of house and home. But a good starter of soup or salad, then the entree, they're not eating as much of that entree. So it does help my budget stretch. It's also a great way to get vegetables into them. As you can see, the onions are starting to change. We certainly have far way to go before we hit translucency, but you can definitely see that things are starting to occur. This is about when I like to add my green onions into things.
Do that again.
This is about the time when I like to add the green onions in. And if you don't have green onions, it's not a necessity. I like that little pop of color. All right, we are just about where we need to be to add our liquid. As you can see, the onions are getting that beautiful transparency to them. They're not as rigid and firm. They've started to break down a bit. So we're gonna go ahead and put in our veggie stock. Again, that's 2 cups of veggie stock. You can make your veggie stock from scratch, but quite frankly, it's just as good. Any veggie stock that's boxed works just fine. It's not cost prohibitive. Then we're gonna add the entire bottle of Chardonnay. Yes, I know, you'll find no recipe that says that. I guarantee you, it's delightful. And then you wanna do that 1/2 cup of brandy. 1/2 cup. Put in your salt. I'm a fan of the Pink Himalayan. You can use whatever kind of salt you like, I prefer. And then your bay leaves. Your bay leaves are just going to stay in there while it's cooking, and then before you serve it, you do take those bay leaves out. You don't eat bay leaves. But what a difference they make in your soup. So we're gonna bring this up. Oh, it smells really good. We're gonna bring that up to a nice boil. And then we're gonna drop it down just so it's at a rolling boil. As it's cooking down, if you're starting to see that you're losing a lot of your liquid, at any time you can add more water to this as it's cooking throughout the day. It's not gonna change your flavor because that water's gonna continue to evaporate and bring that level back down for you. But we do wanna bring that to a nice rolling, hard boil, and then bring it down to a rolling boil. Then we're gonna cover it and let it go while we're cooking the rest of our items. All right, as you can see, we are now at a really nice hard boil. So before I stick this on a simmer, cover it, and forget it for a couple of hours, I'm gonna go ahead and add another 2 cups of water to this. Just so it has enough liquid to really be able to cook those onions down. And really that's what we need to do. We're covering it, we're forgetting it for 2 hours. I'm gonna turn that down to a medium heat just so we have kind of a rolling simmer going. All right, see you back in 2 hours. All right, here we are. We have simmered for 2 hours, and here's what we're gonna get from that. If you remember what it looked like originally, now you have this golden, beautiful soup. Your onions have cooked down. That's incredible. Now, if you remember me talking to you about the oven-safe bowl, so all I did is scoop 1 ladle of soup directly into my oven-safe bowl. I took a hunk of that bread. I took 1 piece of Swiss cheese, and this is how beautiful that soup looks when it's ready to be served. Really fantastic. From our home to yours, we wish you bon appetit. Manja. Enjoy.